Hello everyone, so good to see you today. It's really amazing that this is our second service and we are able to come back to online again and just have this connection. Sadly, with the new ruling, we still can't have our services, but we thank God that we have this platform that we can connect together, even though we are in distance, but our hearts and our spirits are together. And thank you for joining for this service as we tune in and we begin to listen together, as I just have a short encouragement today to share with everyone. Following from my last message, which was from Zechariah chapter 10, and I was sharing about, it's time for us in this season to ask for the rain, and that God is about to do something amazing, and this rain is much needed. And we thank God for all our friends who joined us. We had a lot of new friends from Australia, from US, from Canada, from the Philippines, from Sarawak, and we thank God for all the wishes that we got from them. Today I just want to encourage us, and I want to continue in this whole book of Zechariah, because there is a very powerful flow in this book as I share and continue from last week's or the previous message. Today I want to encourage us, or rather I've titled today's message for all of us, YM Without Walls. In our previous video, we heard how Elder Ho gave us an encouragement. It came about like a big picture. Over the years, Elder Ho has always been sharing the big picture. He is actually our modern day prophet. I remember the very first forming of YM. It is because of the big picture that God has put in his heart that resonate and witness with the elders and the leadership in the English church. And Elder Ho has always been, over the years that I worked with him, he's always sharing about the big picture. And he seems to be the modern day prophet, and how God has speak through him to give direction. And if you listen to his previous encouragement that he gave us, this big picture, he was talking about YM, going out, sharing the gospel and being a blessing. I like how he used vision. He speaks in vision. He talked about this aircraft, this big, going around and being blessing. If you follow his big picture and his vision that he gave us, even in the forming of YM, he talked about we are like the snow coming down from the mountain, being a blessing to all the villages down there. And this time round, he talked about how YM to go out and be a great blessing. Talked about Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the world. And I want to follow from that, and I've titled today's sharing YM Without Walls. I think we are at the place and a season that we need to dream big and look at the big picture, and putting all this together. Today I want to share from you from the book of Zechariah, this time chapter 2. And I would like you in your own time, look at the whole passage in Zechariah chapter 2, verse 1 to verse 13. But today I want to personalize verse 4 to verse 5. Let me read to you. Jerusalem shall be inhabited as villages without walls, because of the multitude of people and livestock in it. And I will be her wall of fire around, declares the Lord, and I will be glory in her midst. Zechariah chapter 2, verse 4 to 5. I want to personalize this, and I want to share like this. YM shall inhabit as villages without wall, because of the multitude of young people in our society, community, and nation. And God will be like a wall around YM, declares the Lord, and God will be the glory in the midst of YM. I want to share first from the richness of this passage to give you an understanding when Zechariah was writing this passage, what was the context? And the context is the people of God were living in Babylon. And the people of God, because they have forsaken God and forgotten His way, they were taken as captive and they are living in Babylon. And now comes a time, a season, where God used a prophet and gave him a vision to remind the people of God, hey, this is not your destiny. This is not your end thing that I have planned for you. God had a different purpose and destiny for His people. But it was in this season that they were in Babylon. And it looks like they were so comfortable in Babylon that they have forgotten God. They have custom and adapted to the culture of Babylon, to the gods of Babylon, to the society of Babylon, and they become like one of those in Babylon until they have forgotten that they are the chosen people, the royal priesthood. And God, in His promise, from Genesis chapter 12 that He gave to Abraham, that the people of God were called to be a blessing to the nation. The people of God were called to have a special relationship. The people of God were called to multiply and fill the earth. With that promise, with that context, God came and gave a vision to Zechariah and asked him to give this picture to the people of God to say, God's purpose for Israel or the people of God were to fill the earth with His glory. God's purpose for the people of God was to multiply and be a blessing. And God is giving a vision, a picture to these people saying, imagine the people of God will be so big in numbers, in numerous, that wall cannot contain them anymore. They are so big in numbers that they will be people, like villages without walls. They will be in big numbers, in big context, to the point that they don't need walls anymore. God will be their protection. God will be their glory. And this passage has two key things that talking about God's purpose over the people of God. One, the purpose of prosperity. God is reminding them that their destiny or their purpose in God is to prosper, to be in numbers. He's talking about they will be in such a big number when they go back to their own city. When they go back to Jerusalem, they will be huge in number. And that is the purpose of prosperity that God is talking in the context of people coming to know Him will be so big. It will be so huge, you cannot contain them anymore. And then the second one, when they grow so big and they become, in big numbers, God will protect them. God will be with them. These are the two principles that I look in this chapter, prosperity and protection. That there will be such prosperity and growth for the people of God that Jerusalem will not be able to wall in anymore. The multitude of people and livestock, according to this passage, will be so many that Jerusalem will be like villages spreading out across the land without walls. I want to bring this principle to us. What does it mean to YM without walls? And I want to share in this context of God's purpose and God's desire for all of us, every church, every young people's group, every movement is to do the Great Commission. That is what Jesus gave to all the disciples, each and every one of us, to take that Great Commission and to make disciples. And that we are to make disciples to fill this earth with God's people and His glory. That is the universal truth and fact that the Bible has given to every Christian. That we are to take this mandate to know Him and to make Him known. And I pull what Elder Ho has given as a big picture and what I've shared to you about God pouring His rain. We are now need to discern this, recognize this, change our mindset and heart and take YM without walls. And this was the apostolic work that we were building and writing before the MCO happens. God opened doors that suddenly we have small groups everywhere. They may not be coming to YM church. They may not be attending a service. But this church or this small group that began to take place started to give a picture how YMCG started to can grow without walls. There are three simple points from this principle or this passage that I want to encourage us now that we take YM and have this picture of growing without walls, that we will be in big numbers, that have this picture of prosperity. And the purpose of prosperity is for God's glory. It's always about God's glory. God wants His children to return back to Him. God wants His people to know Him. And this is where we are called to be a blessing. There are three simple things that I want to share with you. Number one, be clear of our calling and direction. Be clear of our calling and direction. The people of God in Babylon, in this particular passage, have forgotten that they were called to be a chosen royal priesthood. They were called to be His people. They are God's chosen people. And their calling was to be a nation that will be a blessing to the entire world. That was their calling. And their direction was to go back to God. And that is why God began to speak through His prophet to remind them of their calling. YM, we need to remember our calling. We need to remember what is our purpose. We are called into the marvelous light. We are called to shine to other young people. We are called to, tell the young people around us that this is home. There is a God who loves you. There is a God who cares for you. There is a Father who will restore you. There is a Father who will reconcile you. There is a God that will prosper you. We need to be clear of this calling, and we need to be clear of our direction. And our direction in FGA is the vision of M100. We were called to go and plant churches. M100 starts with CG. M100 starts with small groups. M100 starts with us forming community. Think about community as homes. YM is called to plant homes everywhere. Home for the young people. There may not be a structure. There might not be a clear black and white. But the call is very clear. We are blessed to be a blessing. The Great Commission, taken in a different way, is to plant homes everywhere for young people. And I want to share with you, this MCO, and coming out of this MCO, don't get carried away and be comfortable with the so-called new norm. This pandemic has caused us to be socially distant. This pandemic has caused us that we cannot come together as church. This pandemic has caused everybody, Christian or non-Christian, everybody out of this new pandemic is having one way or another a form of fear, a concern. Can you imagine talking about crowd? No, at this time. No crowd, no in numbers, no coming together. What is without wall? It looks to me a crowded place, congregated, too many people. Wow, can you imagine the outbreak can happen? And these are the kind of fear, and our mind is being conditioned out of this so-called new norm, neglecting our CG, coming together, physically having fellowship. It doesn't change God's purpose and God's destiny. Don't be too comfortable with this new MCO norm. We are called to be a blessing. We are called to reach out. We are called to have close fellowship. We are called to build families. We are called to build home. And I need us to be clear while we adhere to the rules and while we follow the guidelines, and I'm all for it. Remember, don't be like the people of God, like in this passage. They get so comfortable that they begin to be in Babylon until they make Babylon and follow Babylon culture and follow Babylon's God and have forgotten God's purpose and destiny. Do not allow this new pandemic and the condition and what is going on take over and change us to forget God's purpose and blessing. Be clear. Each of us in this direction or in this calling, those of us who are in YM, we are passionate about the young people. We are passionate about this call. And the bigger passion about this is we are all passionate about young people. We are in YM because of young people. We are in YM because we are passionate about this. And if you're not passionate in YM about the young people and about your generation, the young people generation, then that's why we become stale, lose our calling, lose our passion. Everything becomes not excited for us. We are here for the sake of here. We are not in YM because we are looking to be significant here. We are significant in God and in His purpose and calling. YM is not a place for us to form our own cliquishness. YM is not because we are very exclusive people. YM is not about, just look after our CG and be happy about it. I want us to change our mindset. YM is not to babysit CGs and young people, and definitely not our purpose and calling to just keep people happy where they are. And I need us to be very clear about this. And I need to ask us to renew your passion. If you're passionate for the young people, you need to put your passion into action. I am passionate about the young people, and that's why in the last 50 days of this MCO, and I've been passionate about nurturing and journeying with young people. I am excited about the new people. In the last 50 days, there have been a couple of young people, whether those who are studying have been talking to me about this whole challenges, online classes, and how it has caused neck pain, back pain, and I'm passionate about young people, and I've been journeying with them. I'm passionate about those that I've been doing one-on-one, who's talking to me in their first year and second year of their college, trying to discern and process what is God's purpose for them. What are they going to do with their degree? What is God's purpose for them in studying? What is God's purpose for them when they graduate? And I have been talking to some young people, those who are working, and processing to them, is this the place they need to work? Some are waiting to find work. Some are struggling. Is this where God has called them? Some wants to know what is God's purpose and plan in their life. That is my passion. I'm excited for this generation. I love young people, and I want to talk to them. And I see myself as a role of just journeying and nurturing and being a blessing in any way I can to help them to discern God, to help them to know what is God's purpose. And that is my passion, and that's what I do. What about you? Are you really passionate in YM? Remember your passion. We are here because we love young people. We are focused. We need to be clear of our direction. And as we move like that, today the Great Commission gives us a platform to make disciples all over the world. Today the Great Commission, or the process of discipleship, enable us to make friends. I think I've shared about this, about making friends, how I've been making friends from a group of young people who are interested to cook, to bake, to exercise, to group of young people who are interested in dancing, and there are many forms of online that you can make friends. Often, YM members have asked me about, they don't know how to make new friends. You know what, guys? There are many ways of making new friends today. And I think the how and the detail about making new friends, talk to your zone leaders, talk to your zone pastors. They will able to help you how to make new friends. What I want to share is that, don't forget about this calling. Don't forget about this purpose. And if you don't rise up for your generation right now, the people of God in Zechariah's generation is sad, right? They completely neglected their purpose and calling until Jesus had to come back. And the birth of Jesus was a new platform that God used to reconcile the whole world. Today, through Jesus Christ, we can make new friends and make disciples anywhere and everywhere. And I just want to remind you, don't be like the generation, the Moses generation. They died in the desert. Don't be like the generation, the people like in the generation of Zechariah. They didn't rise up for their generation, and that generation gone. And I want to share with you, don't forget about your generation. Rise up, step up, be part of what God is doing. This is your generation. This is your passion. And be clear of that. The second thing is, from this passage, I want to share with you, be clear of His voice. Grow in His presence. You see, even when they were in a time of Babylon and living like this, and as a captive, God was speaking. And when God speaks, they were very clear. It came through a prophet. It was His voice, and God began to share and remind them. During this new MCO and this new norm that everybody is trying to adapt, be clear of God's voice. Be clear of what God is speaking to you. And grow in that presence. The last 50 days, because of my new habits of doing devotion and learning to draw closer to God, I've grown in His presence. I have grown in His presence. And the instant thing about God's presence is His peace, His joy, and I begin to be clear what God is speaking to me. So by being clear in His voice, this is what you can do. Don't be too comfortable where you are with the routine. Rather, when you want to be clear of His voice, listen to His voice until He speaks to you. Be still and be determined to hear His voice. Wait, be hungry. Read your Bible until He speaks to you. Spend time with God until He speaks to you. And then begin to grow. As you begin to grow in His presence, you will be able to recognize Him. As this new MCO ruling started to adapt and all that, I started to go back to do visitation. I went to visit a new friend last week, and one of the things that that they have feedback to me is that they felt so happy to see me. They had so much joy because we had conversation. I was just merely processing with these young people because they were lost, and they begin to just share. Me just being there and talking to them brought a lot of joy. I just want to be clear, as I was doing this visitation, I follow all the rules, got my temperature checked, follow the distancing, keep 1 meter distance. I can still visit people, right? And because we all can go back to work, and so that's my work, following all the rules, and I enjoyed doing that visitation. And this was a testimony. And I will say, because I've been growing in God's presence. And when I grow in God's presence, everywhere I go, I bring that tangible presence of God, His peace and His joy. And that's what it means. So in this new MCO, listen to His voice, because God will direct you. God will tell you how to do the Great Commission. God will be clear about His purpose. God is clear about His purpose. God is clear about His destiny. It's whether we are clear or not. Listen to His voice. The third and my last point out of this present is out of this passage is this: be confident on His purpose. Be confident on His promises. You know what? This verse says, I will be her wall around her, and I will be the glory in the midst. This is a clear promise, God promised when you and I do Great Commission, when you and I started to do God's purpose and God's will, God will be our protection. God will keep me safe. God will protect me. And God will be showing His glory while I pursue His purpose, His passion, and His calling. His promise is very clear. What does that mean to you and me? My dear friends, dream about your passion and dream what God has called us to be. Don't be afraid to come out to start our physical CG. God's promise is that He will be there. He will be our wall. While we follow all these guidelines from MOH, while we adhere, and I strongly adhering to the Ministry of Health guidelines, begin to step out of your fear. Begin to dream your CG to multiply. Begin to think. While now we follow all these rules, begin to start dreaming that God will come through. Begin to see your CG growing in numbers. Begin to see how each of your CG turning into a home, families, new people coming in, new people wanting to know the purpose of God. Now is the greater season where the harvest field is ready. Everyone around us have experienced or know the fact of the fear of this pandemic. Everybody knows about the fear of losing job, catching the sickness, being sick, being hospitalized, and the worst, the fear of death. And this reality and the truth also tell us why now is the time that everyone needs to know that God can protect them, God will keep them safe, God will keep them secure, and God will come through for them. As I conclude this, I want to encourage us. Begin to dream. Know that God has a purpose and a vision. Be clear of His voice. Imagine when our CG comes back in this new MCO norm, begin to dream and begin to look forward to multiply your CG. Begin to think about how to make disciples. Process with your own leaders. Process how the new norm. I want to encourage out of today's message, if YM is going to be without walls, then YM needs a new DNA. YM cannot be having a CG party and just be happy and keep everybody happy where they are. I don't think YM is called to make people happy here. I don't think. And therefore, I'm looking forward how we are going to change our new norm and come up with a new DNA. YM needs a new DNA. We need a new culture. We carry our values, but we need a new DNA for each CG. How we must truly live up to our calling to be a blessing. And I want to encourage you, while you pursue and carry your passion, why we are called to be in YM, why we are here in YM, why we want to do the young people's work, why we are passionate about the young people, why we want to be clear, be really open, be really excited. Now I want to share with you, I met a new friend, a young man, and he's all the way in Vietnam. And this young man, is a professional dancer. He's a ballet dancer. You know what? I don't know anything about dancing, and definitely I don't know anything about ballet. But when I was talking to this young man, he asked this question. He do not know about the Lord. So he asked this question, what can I learn about this quarantine period? What is there to learn about this quarantine period? And that gave me a platform to talk to him about purpose, about calling. And as I begin to just chat with him and has meaningful conversation, it began to excite him, and because I realized he has a deep hunger, wanting to know what is his purpose as a professional dancer. What is his purpose during this quarantine? What would he achieve, or what is there for him? And because he do not know the Lord, he cannot hear God's voice. I can hear God's voice. I know God, and I begin to talk to him and encourage him how to discern his purpose. And you know what happened? And what happened is that in our conversation, that he began to form and said, got this whole idea about forming a small group. A small group within his whole dancing academy and the professional dancers. And he said he wants to help them to process their purpose, because he realized all the young people who are doing this professional dancing have no purpose what they're going to achieve out of this. And then he began to get the idea and talk from me how to be a blessing, how to be meaningful to other people. And so I can't wait to learn from him and to share with you, the testimony out of this, when he began to form this small group and begin to gather all these people, and he began to form a community that will be a blessing. I begin to have a message. I started to get a message, or rather I'm working on the next message, looking from his passion and his encouragement, how God give each one of us an expression. And I'm very excited about this. I've titled that Dance for God. And why I'm sharing you with this is that, can you imagine, without walls, without structure, make friends outside, begin to find purpose and calling, and in return I begin to get ideas and begin to get inspiration. And this is from making friends. And I want to share that excitement to you. When you make new friends, and when you begin to go on this purpose of fulfilling God's destiny in you, and begin to write on YM Without Walls, and begin to be excited and be passionate about having multiple homes, communities, passion, interest, do you know the joy it brings to you? Do you know the just that experience and feeling about being excited, feeling God's glory all over the place? And that's how I want to end today's message. YM Without Wall. You multiplying and being a blessing, and begin to listen to God's voice for His strategy, for His direction, and begin to renew and activate your passion for the young people and your generation, and be assured in God's promise. And so with that, I'm excited. I want you to be excited as well. Look forward how God is going to come through for all of us. God bless you and have a wonderful week.